Good morning and welcome in, folks. We are going to take a look at our last piece of our political party discussion. Today we're going to look at minor parties and political organizations. So let's get into it. Okay, so during the 2020 election, here were some of the minor parties that ran against the Democratic and Republican parties: Libertarian, Green, Socialist, the Alliance Party, the Prohibition Party, and the Independent Party. So, what do these parties represent and how can they affect an election? The number and variety of minor parties can make them difficult to distinguish and understand. Some are regulated to a particular area or state, for example, the Green Party of Alaska, while some try to compel the entire country, like the Libertarian Party. Lastly, most are very short lived and simply don't survive the intense political climate here in the United States. So understand this. There are going to be four types of minor parties, all right, here in the United States. Let's take a look at each of them. All right, we'll open up with what we call ideological parties. These are parties based on a particular set of beliefs. They are basically offering a comprehensive view on social, economic, and political matters. Most of these have been born from some shade of Marxist thought. All right, so this is more left-leaning. They may include these type of parties: socialist, socialist labor, socialist worker, or the communist parties. Okay. However, a new ideological party has kind of emerged in the last 30, 40 years, and that's the Libertarian Party. They have a much different approach. This party really kind of calls for individualism and the removal of most government functions and programs. Libertarians are very anti-tax, very anti-war. Okay, these are things to keep in mind. Now, ideological parties don't necessarily pull many votes, but they are very long-lasting. We also have what we call single-issue parties. Okay, these are parties that are going to focus on one public policy matter. Okay, their names typically indicate what their primary concerns are. For example, the Free Soil Party, which emerged in the 1840s and 1850s, was opposed to the spread of slavery. Okay, the Know Nothings in the 1850s, this was a group of people that opposed Irish Catholic immigration into the United States after the potato famines. Okay, they were known as the Know Nothings. As events become less and less of an issue, these single issue parties tend to dissolve. However, even in today's election, 2020, the Prohibition Party still exists today. Prohibition Party obviously had much more prominence 1910s, 1920s, but it still exists today. Now, the third type of parties that we have are what we call economic protest parties. Okay, these are often rooted in periods of economic discontent. What that means is people are not happy with the economy, they are upset with how money is being distributed, and they're going to take a stance against it. So, for example, the Greenback Party tried to take advantage of farmers being upset at Wall Street from 1876 to 1884. Their demand was they want to have free coinage of silver. They wanted to have federal regulations for railroads. They wanted to have an income tax, and they wanted to issue labor legislation. Okay, that was the Greenback Party. These economic protest parties typically would dissolve once economic conditions improved. Okay, so even in 2020, we see again some parties that are going to mostly focus on the economy. Okay. Our last one is probably the most important. So let's talk about splinter parties. So these are parties that have split away from one of the major parties at some time in our history. So most of the important minor parties have been splinter parties throughout the history. Our examples from the Republican side of things, we have the Bull Moose Party, which was led by Teddy Roosevelt. That established itself in 1912. From the Democratic standpoint, you had George Wallace's American Independent Party, which split away from the Democrats in 1968. Both of these parties were significant and garnered a lot of attention. Now, most splinter parties essentially form around a strong personality and someone who is persuasive enough to pull votes away from a major party. These parties have faded or collapsed once the leader has stepped aside. So right now, here in 2020, a lot of political experts, analysts, there is some speculation that between now and 2024, the Republican Party may actually split into a very pro-Trump Republican side and a more moderate in the middle Republican side. So this will be a very interesting dynamic to see how it shakes out. Obviously, the two have very different thoughts, and you're going to see over these next few years, again, a party that is trying to, again, recover from this last election, and they're going to have to try to almost reinvent themselves. So we will see what happens within the Republican Party. Now, understand this. Minor parties have had huge impacts in our elections. Let's take a look at 1912. This is a really interesting case. What happens here, guys, if you didn't know your history, again, Theodore Roosevelt is actually going to assume the presidency. He's going to become the 26th president after William McKinley is assassinated. So he's actually going to serve from 1901 to 1909. Okay? He was succeeded by another Republican, William Howard Taft, in 1908. So Taft is going to be the president from 1908 to 1912. He wants to go for re-election. However, Taft, Roosevelt did not get along very well. They did not see eye to eye. So what does Roosevelt do? He is very frustrated with Taft's leadership. He's very frustrated with Taft's brand of conservatism, and he's going to create his own party. He's going to create a third party known as the Bull Moose Party. So again, if you know anything about President Roosevelt, he is big in conservation. He's big into wildlife. So the bull moose becomes the symbol of his political party in 1912. Taft, again, as he's trying to get reelected, runs into a major issue with this third party emergence. Roosevelt essentially prevents Taft from getting reelected, and what happens is allows the Democratic candidate Woodrow Wilson to win in a landslide. It basically paves the way for an easy victory for the Democrats. If you look at the election results I have listed on my slideshow, Woodrow Wilson, Democrat, is going to win 435 electoral votes. Theodore Roosevelt, again, who essentially is running on his own here with his own party, his own resources, he gets 88 electoral votes. And all of this is pulled away from Taft, who only receives 8 electoral votes as a Republican. So, minor parties can definitely have an impact. And let's take a look at why minor parties are important, okay? So, a strong third party candidacy can play a decisive role as playing the spoiler, okay? Sometimes you hear that in sports. When a team that doesn't necessarily have a chance to win can ruin another team's season, they play spoiler, okay? So a third party will leech away votes from one of the major parties and solidify a win for the other major parties. So, examples. Bull Moose Party is going to leech away votes from Republicans in 1912. In 1992, Ross Perot, very successful on the Reform Party platform, he's going to take away votes from George H.W. Bush. This allowed Bill Clinton to win the presidency. We look at 2000, again, a very controversial election between Gore and George W. Bush, but it's Ralph Nader's Green Party that really takes away a lot of Democratic votes, and this allowed George W. Bush to win the presidency. Al Gore obviously did not win. So this spoiler effect can be felt at the national, state, and local level. Minor parties are willing to essentially take quick and clear stances on issues. So you're going to see more opinionated situations. You're going to see situations where minor parties don't necessarily beat around the bush. They're going to get right to the point. They're going to speak their mind. Minor parties are going to typically focus on a major issue that the two parties tend to ignore during the campaigns. All right, income tax, women's suffrage, railroad and bank regulation, and pensions have all been issues that minor parties have actually helped bring to the table. Okay, so Democrats and Republicans also, over time, what they've been doing is essentially stealing some of these ideas and basically running with them in their own campaign. So the minor party comes up with the idea, they've got the spark. Republican or a Democrat looks at that idea and says, well, maybe we can modify this, maybe we can twist it a little bit, and we'll run with it. So that's what happens. All right, again, it is very cutthroat. It's very dog-eat-dog in American politics. Now, let's talk about political organization a little bit, okay? So at the national level, we have what we call national party machinery, okay? This is the structure of both parties at the national level. It has 4 basic elements, okay? At the National Convention, which we've talked about, has the National Committee, has the National Chairperson, and the Congressional Campaign Committee. So, remember, Again, National Convention, this is a showcase for the presidential candidate and other major political figures for each major party. So it is a big celebration. It is a big party. This is where things come together. This is where each party essentially has its rallying cry. Now, the National Committee is going to set this up. We have the RNC, which is the Republican National Committee, and the DNC, which is the Democratic National Committee. Okay, each handles the duties and responsibilities of the party. Most of their work is going to be geared toward the election cycle and setting up these national conventions. Now, the national chairperson, this is going to be the leader of the National Committee. All right, this person serves a 4-year term. They're going to direct work at the party's headquarters, and they're going to coordinate campaign events during that election year. The congressional campaign committees, these are groups that are basically working toward getting Congress members to get reelected to the House and to the Senate. Okay, members will serve for 2 years and will also try to ensure that seats that were given up by someone retiring, remain within the party. Okay, now at the state and local level, okay, state committees will work on reelecting state officials to office. State committees are also going to work on spreading party ideas throughout the state. At the local level, voters are placed in wards. So these are in big cities. These are all divided, and you have a situation where people are going to vote on their city council members. And we also have what we call precincts. All right, these are going to be in your more rural areas. This is the smallest unit of an election administration, and voters report at one polling place. All right, well, that's it, guys. Our discussion on minor parties and political organization. We'll have a journal log that will follow, and I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.